Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review for Hyperion by Dan Simmons. On the world called Hyperion, beyond the law of the hegemony of man, there waits the creature called the Shrike. There are those who worship it, there are those who fear it, and there are those who have vowed to destroy it. In the Valley of the Time Tombs, where huge brooding structures move backward through time, the Shrike waits for them all. On the eve of Armageddon, with the entire galaxy at war, 7 pilgrims set forth on a final voyage to Hyperion, seeking the answers to the unsolved riddles of their lives. Each carries a desperate hope and a terrible secret, and one may hold the fate of humanity in his hands. Hyperion is an adult sci-fi novel written in 1989 and is also a winner of the Hugo Award. It is the first book in the Hyperion Cantos. The way that I normally structure my reviews is I talk about the world, the plot, the characters, the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like, and then I give the book an overall rating. However, I feel like that structure of review is not really going to work for Hyperion. So I'm just going to focus on kind of what the book is about and the things that I liked and I didn't like. In Hyperion, it is the 29th century and Earth as we know it no longer exists, but technology has evolved to the point where we are able to explore other planets, colonize other planets. We have learned how to travel through space-time at the speed of light, so we are able to expand our reach and our colonization. This book surrounds the hegemony, which is a composition of all of the known worlds that have been colonized, and all of these worlds are connected by something called Farcaster portals, and you can actually enter different worlds through these portals. There are some planets which have not yet been contacted per se. They do not have a Farcaster portal. They have not been absorbed by the hegemony, and one of those planets is Hyperion. There is also a federation of sorts called the Technocore, which is run by artificial intelligence. And then we have the Ousters, which are portrayed as being antagonistic. They are attacking different worlds, especially Hyperion, and they are considered to be part human, part something else. Hyperion is such an interesting planet in this world because they have these really unique artifacts called the Time Tombs, which are thought to be constantly moving backward in time. And on this planet, there is something called the Shrike, which protects these Time Tombs. And no one really knows what the Shrike is. He is described as being kind of armored with all of these blades and spikes and things like that, but we don't know, at least not yet, if he is human, if he's alien. We don't really know much about this creature. Because no one understands exactly where the Time Tombs came from, how they work, the significance of them, and the Shrike, a lot of theories have evolved surrounding it, especially religion. So there is a church of the Shrike that has sprung up to worship this part of Hyperion. Because Hyperion is considered kind of a religious place, there are pilgrimages to and from Hyperion, specifically where the Time Tombs are located, and people never come back from these pilgrimages. So we are actually following a group of 7 people. We are following their last pilgrimage to the Time Tombs, and this book is separated into 6 different tales. So each character except for one is giving his or her tale, and we learn through these tales how these characters are connected to Hyperion, and most of them are indirectly connected to this planet or the Shrike or the Time Tombs. So it was super interesting to see how all of these character stories, experiences, lives came together and placed them on this pilgrimage. The characters that we follow include a priest, a soldier, a poet, a detective, a scholar, and a consul. I'm not going to go into depth too much about the characters, but we do get, like I said, a different tale from each character's point of view, and these tales are usually like 75 to 100 pages long. The book is only 6 chapters, so I feel like if I really delve into an analysis of each character, it's going to spoil a lot for you guys if you haven't read it. In my opinion, each of these characters were really well written. You could definitely see them as an individual, meaning that their stories didn't kind of all sound the same. They all had different careers, they all had different backgrounds, they were different ages, they came from different parts of different galaxies, different planets, and I feel like our author did a great job differentiating these character stories from each other. So my cat just decided to knock over my entire tripod, so if things look a little off center, that is why. I'm so sorry. But getting on into it, like I said, I thought that Dan Simmons did a great job with these characters and their stories, but now I'm going to go into things that I did like and that I didn't like. One thing I didn't know before starting this book is that the name Hyperion actually alludes to a poem by John Keats written, I think, in 1818, and it's an unfinished poem by him. I have never read it, but I know that it's about the Titans and the Olympians, which is not something that I'm well versed in, but I am really curious to read the poem now to see if it influenced in any way Dan Simmons' story. One of the things that I liked was the way that Dan Simmons incorporated things that we were familiar with in our history and put them into a book that was supposed to be, hundreds of years into the future so that we could understand the context of the world that he was trying to create. Of course, our author alludes to Earth and things that happened in Earth's history. We see some quotes from Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, a lot of poetry inspirations in this. In fact, the entire planet of Hyperion is kind of revolving around the story of the real John Keats. So I'm super curious to see how that fits in now. So I really appreciated that our author was able to do that. I thought that the prose of Hyperion was absolutely beautiful. In fact, I heard another booktuber, I think it was Chaz, say that this could almost be called literary science fiction. And at first I was like, well, I've never heard that before, I don't know. But after finishing this book, I was like, I could definitely see that. Because it wasn't in any way like military sci-fi, even though there were some battles. It wasn't heavily centered around war. It was more exploring different situations from these characters' point of view and addressing certain themes about life within each of these tales surrounded by this science fiction plot. So literary sci-fi, I think I totally agree with that statement now. Another thing that I liked was the fact that this world, despite being so much in the future and so technologically advanced, was able to be understood, and it was definitely believable. And the funny thing about this is that our author kind of just dumps us into this world with all of these sci-fi terms, these technology terms, and he really doesn't explain any of it. And usually I'm not a fan of that type of writing. I feel like the author, if you're creating a world, should kind of like explain it to your reader. Dan Simmons didn't do that, but I found myself not really minding so much because I was able to determine how things worked based on the context. There was only one instance where I was a little confused about what was happening, and that was the detective story and just the technology that had to go with that. I found super confusing, and that wasn't explained at all. But everything else that he included in this novel, I feel like he gave us enough information so that the reader could infer how things worked without him directly telling us. The next thing that I liked was the just abundance of relevant and interesting themes that our author included in this book. And I feel like the overall story of the 7 pilgrims going to Hyperion was a theme and it had a theme in itself, but then each character's different story had a specific theme, and I absolutely loved that. Some of the themes that were touched upon were the evolution of religion, the place of religion in the world, and also the idea of a deity, the idea of a god, because we have the artificial intelligences who are trying to become like God. And I actually, when I was reading Sea of Rust, I don't know if you guys can see it, a couple of months ago, that was one of the main themes about how AI was wanting to be God and would do anything to become God. So I just felt like that theme, the fact that it was repeated, was really interesting to me. And it almost makes me think that it's not only AIs that can think this way, but humans as well, because humans are the ones that created artificial intelligence. So I love that theme. And then there was another theme of grief or losing a child. I've heard a couple people say that really spoke to them because they have children. I personally don't, but it was still a beautiful story. We have themes surrounding aging and death in this world. People are able to prolong their longevity by doing certain treatments, and there is gene hacking and gene manipulation and things like that. So just the idea that we are either afraid to die or afraid to age is just a really interesting concept. And then I think the theme that mostly stood out to me was the consul's tale. And I feel like there's a couple things that could apply to this, but I'm going to go with the impact of technology on a civilization or on humanity, because we follow a world that was isolated and then was opened up via technology to the rest of the world, and the damage that it did to that current world. And that was just something that I could see as allegorical for our current technological state with computers and iPhones and all of that. So it just made me think. And also with contacting or forcefully contacting uncontacted people, because there are about 100 different tribes that are still uncontacted in our world, and just the idea of forcing them into our society or our civilization because we think that's what's best for them, it might not end up being good for them. So those themes were just really powerful to me, and like I said, really made me think. Now on to the things that I didn't like so much, and really there wasn't a lot. There were a couple of the tales that were overly sexualized to me for no reason. That's just a personal preference. I don't like things that are sexualized for no reason and even made it kind of weird. I don't understand the need for that. So that was really my only gripe. There was that kind of situation in the soldier's tale. There was that kind of situation in the poet's tale, and it's just not for me personally as a reader, but that might not bother you. But other than that, I really enjoyed Hyperion. It was definitely a book that I didn't know anything about before I went into it, so I definitely went into it blind, and I found myself really enjoying the journey of each character, the overall journey of the 7 of them going to visit the time tombs together, and that cliffhanger at the end, that's just not even fair. So I ended up giving Hyperion 5 out of 5 stars, and I cannot wait to read The Fall of Hyperion and see how our author concludes this part of the story. All right, you guys, so that is it for my review of Hyperion. Let me know in the comments if you have read this book or what you thought of it, and I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye. Nice.